Hi there. Before I begin this week's presentation, I would just like to say that I hope you're finding these videos informative. They're designed to provide you with the gist of what you need to know about the subject. They don't include information about assessment tasks or things you may need to know in regards to your upcoming Profex or anything in regards to tutorials if you're an internal student. However, they are designed to provide you what I think you need to know to be able to successfully complete the assessment tasks and the upcoming exams content-wise. So, I hope you enjoy them as much as I like making them, and let's begin. Welcome to Module 7 of Week 8 for ED 1421. This week, we are focusing specifically on literacy events in the classroom. That is why this module is called Oracy in the Early Childhood Classroom. Rather than only focus on the child's home and community, where the child has acquired their language through a diverse array of literacy events and practices, we will now look at the use of oral language in the classroom setting. We will do this by analysing transcripts, which are scripts with classroom dialogue or classroom talk, and how this relates to teaching and learning. This module builds upon your understanding of how young people make meaning through language, and will be what you will be most exposed to during your teaching career. So, let's go. By the end of this unit, you'll be able to identify classroom talk as literacy events and practices, distinguish among different forms of classroom talk, promote learning through classroom discourses, and understand the vital role of oral language in early childhood education. So, to begin looking at language in the classroom, we first need to identify that the classroom has a distinct oral language, known as register or a strict code. You might think that this sounds very obvious, but for some it seems that the discourse in the classroom is the same as their home environment, and it is not until the differences in register or code are pointed out that it becomes clear that it is not a naturally occurring phenomenon, and there are actually differences between the classroom discourse and the home discourse, and that's why the classroom discourse is known to be socially constructed, just like your home discourse is. And we know as children, we learn the discourse of the classroom at a young age. And you probably have memories of how classroom talk was when you were at school, when you were young. And I did know for myself that it was very different to my home discourse, because English wasn't my first language. And the style of language and behaviour in the classroom was very different to what I was used to. And clearly you're going to have students as well that have the same experience, and you'll provide some similarities between the child's discourse at school and the child's discourse at home and the discourse at school. My experience supports the research that finds that comparisons of classroom talk to home talk reveal that the differences vary according to cultural background and other factors. However, research has also found that the early childhood education setting reflects the discourse of home talk much more than upper grades, such as when you start going into grade 5, 6, 7 and into high school and beyond, which means that the early childhood setting is a good transition into a more formal arena regardless of the child's background. So, good to know. Looking further into research, classroom talk has been found to be highly structured, meaning it has a routine and a procedure that is followed on a day-to-day basis. It is also strongly rule-governed, with rules on how to do everything from how to empty your cup to entering the classroom. It is also largely teacher-controlled, or some even say dominated, and it is also asymmetrical in terms of the options and rights, turn-taking, topic setting that students experience on a day-to-day basis. And the speaker's rights are distributed by the teacher rather than assumed at the discretion of each person involved, as is more common in the home context, where there is a lot more freedom of expression, where basically the child can speak quite freely, where in a classroom there is a time and a place to speak and a procedure on how to speak. So what are the characteristics of classroom talk? Well, classroom talk has many distinctive characteristics, and we'll be examining some of these as we progress in this week's module. What we do know is that not all students come to school equipped with the literacy events of the school. Therefore, the teacher needs to emulate the home environment and draw on his or her students' experiences to try and help students make that transition to a more formal environment. That also reflects elements of their home life. Campbell and King make the point that the nature of the relationship between teacher and students in the classroom is characterised by forms of language interaction operating between and among teacher and students. This means that the very way that teachers will talk with their students in the early childhood learning context, or any learning context for that matter, will reflect key issues to do with what the teacher and child see as learning and teaching in the classroom. So there are all those dynamics at play that influence the type of conversation that is had. Well, what has been identified as the most common type of classroom talk, and what no doubt you as a practicing teacher have memories of when you were at school, is a very traditional pattern known as IRE. And researchers have found that this pattern, which is initiation, response and evaluation, is the most common type of talk in classrooms today, and particularly traditionally. So we are now going to examine further this kind of talk known as IRE. So this type of talk has been found to be the most typical of classroom discourse and is often called is often known to be part of the hidden curriculum. It's the implicit knowledge of how classrooms operate for both the teacher and student. For some children, these barriers that are created by the hidden curriculum are second nature. They have grown up with similar practices, but for others it may be all new and they can be held back because of their lack of recognition of these hidden curriculum practices. They are just not used to this type of talk. What is important to know is that research is finding that institutional practices like IRE in the classroom appear to reduce children's opportunities for learning. This is because the IRE pattern, everything goes according to the teacher's direction or instruction in this type of talk. And the teacher so what this means basically is that the teacher controls the talk. The kind of talk, so what is being talked about, the amount of talk, so how long the child talks for, who gets to talk, when a person gets to talk, and which talk or answer is correct. And the teacher also provides a running commentary on what's happening. So that's like, agreeing with what the student says or nodding their head. So it's even non-verbal factors that will provide the student acknowledgement of what they're saying. The teacher also provides, however, there is a lot of commentators saying that the reason why the IRE pattern is so dominant within the classroom is because of the teacher's large need to have control. I would argue that it has become such an ingrained habit of our education system that this is one of the reasons why it is such a predominant form of talk in the classroom. And I think it is the teacher's awareness of how to incorporate other strategies to teaching and learning that is key to using other ways of teaching and learning. So I think once a teacher is aware that there are other ways of engaging in talk in the classroom, they're much less likely to use IRE as a dominant form of teacher-student interaction. So to delve further into questioning, because we're going to go a little bit further into what types of questions there are, basically there is open, closed and rhetorical questions. So we know that teachers can control classroom talk through the use of questioning. We've covered that. It is also part of management to use questioning. So teachers will use questioning as a part of behaviour management to try and get students, focused on the topic and even thinking about other things or distracting them from what they're actually thinking about at that particular stage. So for this reason, up to 90% of teacher questions are for the purpose of checking understanding or mastery of concepts, but there is also the element of behaviour management as well. Some young children may find teacher questioning is very different to what they are used to. I remember finding it particularly alien, as prior to my schooling nobody ever asked me a question or for my opinion. It was just, you were told things, but you weren't asked, what do you think about this? Therefore, the questioning process can be something your students will take some time to become used to. There are 3 question types. There is open questions. These are known as what are referred to as like genuine questions that are looking for extra information and provide power to the person who is going to answer because he or she can respond in various or unpredictable ways. Whereas there's a closed question, and this has a specific single often right answer, such as a yes or no. The person asking the question already knows the answer and is in the position of power, as a student needs to guess the right answer of what the questioner or the teacher is asking. Lastly, there is a rhetorical question, which is asked for effect rather than to get an answer, such as, would you like to close that door? This question implies that the student must close the door rather than do they want to close the door. It does not require an answer. It is more of a request or something for the student to think about, but they're unlikely to say, yes, I will, or no, I won't. It's a rhetorical question. So, to enhance the learning of students, or our students, and to encourage them to have a more active role in their own learning, research reveals that active involvement in learning is essential for new learning to take place. Exploratory talk, a method of learning that provides opportunity for students to become actively involved in discussion of ideas, is one example of a powerful form of active learning. There are 2 types of talk in the classroom. Exploratory talk, the thinking out aloud kind of talk, with opportunities to develop, reflect, backtrack, negotiate, collaborate, open up rather than close off possibilities, such as through using open questions, as you have experienced in the discussion board. And there is presentational talk, the type of talk that is demonstrated by the IRE pattern that we've just gone through. It is the kind of talk that you produce when you're ready to present the facts as you know them or the right answer, thus encouraging answers to closed questions, and thus does not encourage the active participation of the learner. Both exploratory and presentational talk have a role in education, but to develop thinking skills, oral fluency, problem solving, and the ability to critique, analyse and negotiate in our students, we need to encourage exploratory talk rather than the IRE pattern, because basically exploratory talk has been found to make your learners active in their learning rather than as passive recipients, which is what you want to try to avoid, particularly in their future. So, to summarise Module 7, we now know that teachers control most of classroom discussion, particularly through questioning techniques, using both open and closed questions. We know this because up to 90% of classroom discussion consists of the IRE pattern, but it is essential for teachers to break out of this pattern, especially as exploratory talk has been found to enhance learning, whereas presentational talk can discourage the discussion of ideas, problem solving and other active learning. Lastly, we also know there are 3 questioning types: open, closed and rhetorical. These all play a role, but open questioning is the most effective because it encourages student participation and empowerment, which is essentially the goal of 21st century learning. Okay, if you have any further questions, please post questions about the subject or this module into the frequently asked questions located in LearnJCU, or contact me directly via email. See the subject outline, the LibGuide, LearnJCU and Facebook for further contact details and information about this subject. Thank you for listening to Module 7, Oracy in the Early Childhood Classroom. Next week I will present a video for Module 8, Linguistic Diversity Among Young Children. Please subscribe and comment. Any feedback is appreciated. Thank you. Bye for now.